Okay, good morning, everyone. I'd like to call the meeting to order and acknowledge that we're in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu, Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal Lake 40 First Nation in Treaty 3 territory. My name is Neil Harden. I am chairing today's panel. With me are Kevin Stevenson and Valerie Werhan. The assessor today is Merrick Frolick, and the administrative personnel is Zachary Mohan. To the Zoom participants of the hearing, please note you are placed in the waiting room till your property is called upon. When it is your turn, you'll be admitted into the meeting. Kindly follow along on the City of Winnipeg's Board of Revision YouTube channel for the hearing process. Once a host submits you into the hearing, please close and mute your YouTube player. You will then be permitted to speak with respect to your property. Once your hearing is concluded, you can leave the meeting. We will be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matters for which revision is requested have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparisons of assessments of properties are not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it in the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order to be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of King's Bench if the matter pertains to the applications of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all the applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You receive the board's decision by registered mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live stream recorded and be part of the public record. We'll be hearing items 4 through 8 on the docket today. Mr. Mohan, please affirm the applicant's and assessor's testimony.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Okay, Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Merrick Frolick.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. And Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Rocky Neufeld?
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Okay, our first property today is 1455 Buffalo Place, and there's a value, class, and liability on this. So, Mr. Frolick, if you can begin by entering the basic information, and then we will deal with class and liability.
Well, it's as it stands right now, one of my peers is working towards fixing the class and liability issue with regards to this property. And so we're in the process of actually making the changes that will be appropriate to fix it, to correct the class and liability for this property. So other than that, I have no information to provide right now.
Okay, but could you read in the roll number and all that sort
Of course.
stuff?
Okay, no problem. It's file number 24-4339, roll number 030930147555, 1455 Buffalo Place is the address, and the assessed value for this property is 17,133,000.
Okay, so Mr. Neufeld, on class and liability, will you be asking for confirmation of that?
If you just permit a few questions of Mr. Floric. Do you know any of the details of what they're doing, like which property they're looking at, which site?
You know what? The ones that I have on file, and just give me one sec here, Mr. Neufeld. I need to pull that up. Yeah, so the ones that I'm looking at, there's a Manitoba Association of Watersheds, which will be exempt. And the other one that I have here that's going to move to taxable is more transportation. So those are the ones that I have on file here.
Wait, more transport.
More transportation's going from unit 201 to unit 200.
Right.
And then it's the Manitoba Association of Watersheds. Those are the
Okay.
ones that was done through
So
that I'm aware
you're
of.
doing watersheds and changing their tax size. Do you know the date that you're going to use on that?
I just give me one sec here. Yeah, I don't have access to that. What's the date of the lease?
Yeah, I don't have it because it's post reference. I can get it next door in a minute or two.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at here, if you're going to be doing this, a supplemental will be issued, and whatever we're talking about today really doesn't matter, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And are there any other class and liability issues that
Well,
you
we
know,
were
Mr.
looking at the
Neufeld, for this?
MS Society, and we weren't sure on the MS Society on that. Providing a nonprofit organization providing relief to the sick. But if it's in the works, as I said, and you've already committed to making one, and today is February 11th, so it's very likely going to encompass 2025, possibly part of 24. Given your testimony, I think we should uh, uh, perhaps accept your recommendation for today and wait for the supplemental to deal with this matter further.
Yeah. And if there's any other information there, Mr. Neufeld, if you could forward it to, go through the normal process, because usually Jamie's a part of that process.
Yeah, no, and I got to tell you, in the last 2-3 years, the process on liability has gone much better in dealing with the city assessor not going through hearing on it, and that's a credit to the assessment department's work. I got to say something nice every so often about them, and it saves the board the trouble of deliberating on it. So, if that's okay with the board, can we just accept the assessor's recommendation on value and move on?
Okay, we have to then have Mr. Frolick read in his valuation.
And I can listen to it, but I don't want to wander 10 feet over there and listen to this and double check that start date.
Okay.
You won't see my picture, but I will be here.
Well, there's things to be said for that.
Everybody wins on that.
Sorry, I shouldn't be enter.
So, Mr. Harden, then can I just go towards reading the overall valuation for the property?
Yep, just read in the. Did you read in the roll number and file
Yep,
number,
I've already done that.
and then all that, and then the valuation?
Yep. Yeah, just with regards to, I'll just finish with regards to the number of buildings we have listed here, 6. There's 1 and 2-story buildings. They've been built through 1957 to 2018. Wall heights vary between 12 and 27 feet. The total leasable area that we have for this property is 132,265. The big thing to note on this property is that there was a 75,000 square foot new flex warehouse that was built, which is why, which has changed the dynamics of the building. In terms of pictures, there's on page 7, there's a picture of the old building and the new building. And right now I'm just scrolling towards my workup. So right now I'm on page 14 of my brief. And so looking at, and I didn't do this right now, so looking at the various pits here that we have for this property, you can see there's a lot of different businesses listed here. Our 1,329,600 divided by 132,265. Our blended rent is $10.05 for this property. We have the potential net income of 1,329,600. Using a 4.5% vacancy loss, 3% for expenses, $4 for shortfall, we come up with a net operating income of 1,207,867, utilizing a cap rate of 7.05%. The value changes to 17 million. The value is $17,133,000. And that
Okay,
concludes my presentation.
okay, questions, Mr. Neufeld?
No, I have no questions.
Okay, Mr. Stephenson?
Just wondering on the discrepancy of the leasable area, like the applicant is 1,836 square feet less than the city.
Yeah, it's 132, 1,265. And then when I look at
130,429.
Yeah, 130,429. I'm not too sure why the discrepancy exists. All I do know is that this property was at the municipal board, I think, in 2018. And there's one of my other colleagues has a more thorough knowledge of this file, and he could probably be able to answer that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Werhan?
I do not, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I have no questions. So, Mr. Neufeld, are you requesting confirmation?
What I noted was that the assessor had, oh, wait a sec. I was looking at the wrong one. Yeah, please. Sorry about that. Yes, please, confirmation on this one.
Okay. Thank you.
And just for the record, the lease start was 2021, so I'm not concerned about the start date on that now.
Okay. All right, thank you. And that's also for the class and liability pending.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Thank you. So then we will move on to 600 Goldsby. So, Mr. Froelich, if you can read in the base information.
I want to close up my one file, open up my next one. File number is 24-3734. Roll number is 020627 67000. The building consists of 7 different buildings, 3 different premises, built between 1959 and 2015. We have effective years between 1962 and 2015. The wall heights we have are between 11 and 21, but based on my information, it does seem to be a bit higher for part of it, just with an external measurement. We have a leasable area of 122,700. The initial assessment was 11,879,000. I felt more comfortable with providing a value of 11,017,000 for this property. And then the subsequent workout is where I've dropped the rent from $7 a square foot to $6.50 a square foot.
Okay, can you lead us through that?
Okay. In terms of Gillespie, so it's using a $6.50 rent, vacancy allowance of 1.5%. We have an effective income of 785,587, utilizing a 4% shortfall rate and 3% for other. We come up with a net operating income of 754,657, utilizing a cap rate of 6.85%. You come up with a value of 11,017,000.
Okay, Mr. Neufeld, how do you feel about the recommendation?
I'm sorry, we'll have to proceed.
Okay. So is there anything more you would like to add to your presentation, Mr. Froelich?
No, I'll continue on with the rest of my brief. Thank you.
Okay.
So, property owner has been compliant with regards to filling out the income and expense mailer, so we always appreciate that. Property is owner occupied. So when we were looking at the valuation for this property, we noticed there were 5 different groups of buildings here. The original built was built in 1959 of 19,000 square feet of 14 feet. Group 2 of the building was built between 1977 and 1990, consisting of 38,501 square feet. The wall height there is between 11 and 18. Group 3 was built between 1998 and 2002, which consists of 17,438 feet, and that's 16 to 19 feet. And Group 4 was built in 2015 with an area of 47,700 square feet. When I measured the heights of the building, I've never inspected it, but the external measurements would look between 24 and 29 feet, and they are significantly higher than other aspects of the building. Property is located in the northeast quadrant of the city of Winnipeg, off of Raleigh. Well, off of Raleigh and sort of Gillespie per se, and Neil on page 5. And when we're looking at I'm on now page 6 of my brief. I'm showing the before the construction in 2015, and then the added construction that had taken place on the bottom, which is the new square building on the southeast side of the property. Page 7 shows the new warehousing space. Page 8 shows some pictures of inside of the building. All these pictures were taken by another colleague of mine who, and this property was at where it has been appealed to the municipal board, and there's a current appeal on it right now. Page 9. Page 10 shows some more manufacturing space and some a classroom for training. And here's the initial overview of the property. So we had the 3 different PIDs there. We had the older rents, the older buildings at 53,588, and we had the newer spaces of 22,000 and 47,700, with a higher rent of 794 and 782 respectively. So I felt in my process evaluation that my overall rent of $6.50 was fair. So when I looked at the valuation process for this for rental comparables and on page 12, I did a breakdown of what newer properties are leasing for, and then I also did an analysis of some larger rent comparables for the subject property. So for the newer portions that are on the northern side of the city, you know, I have sizes ranging from 49,000 to 148,000, wall heights between 24 feet and 38 feet, and market rents that range from $8.50 to $11.50. I'm providing this for information, just showing what the marketplace is renting for newer properties. And then on the bottom of page 12, I took some large rental comparables of properties that had from 86,000 square feet to 228,000 square feet, height ranges from 15 feet to 34 feet, and these are older properties ranging from 1964 to 2001. And the range of rents I have here is from $365 to $916. For the cap rates of our presentation, we are utilizing a cap rate of 6.85%, and it falls within the city of Winnipeg parameters of the 20th to 80th percentile, which is 6.8, and falls in between the 5.35 and the 7.3%. We've also included information from Collier, CB Richard Ellis, and Cushman Wakefield, which confirms that our cap rate is within the range. I am open to questions. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Neufeld?
Thank you. Sorry, I have this big problem. I always lose the screen here. Okay, thanks. On page 1, you have different different ages, and different wall heights. You were talking about some of the wall heights in the newer sections, I believe, when you were saying 21 feet.
Yeah, I didn't understand the discrepancy there.
Okay,
Because
but there's
when
a
when I
mix of
looked at,
age on the sites, right? There's different ages.
yes,
Okay, and when the city reports these heights, these are external heights, are they not?
I, yes, they are.
Okay, so then an internal height would then have to deduct for the thickness of the truss and the roof decking.
Yes.
And you were not had not inspected the building, I take it?
No, one of my colleagues has inspected this property in the past.
Okay. Um, and there was you're not listing the sale in here. I guess that was, oh, sorry, you do have it, 2008. Why is it at $1?
Uh, that's information that we have on our file.
Okay. Um, the sorry, and at the bottom of page 4, this is the description of the specific areas and their heights, and these are all external measurements then?
Yeah,
Okay. On page 6, the top picture, is that bold purple outline the subject property?
yeah.
Okay. I was just looking for a clearer picture, but uh, on bottom of page 6, you've got a shot, and was this from 2016, the photo?
Yeah, this is the clearest picture that I was able to find.
Okay. And what about these photos? I'm particularly curious about the photo on the top of page 8. Do you have the age on that?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do you know where this was taken?
Uh my speculation that I was taken between on the corner of Neil and Gillespie.
Okay.
Just because there's a dead end.
Right. Yeah. You mean the dead end of Goldsby, where there's
Yeah,
a cul-de-sac?
yeah. Because if you look on page, well, no, I think it's on the dead end. No, not on the cul-de-sac side. It's on the
Oh,
dead end of
on
the
Neil?
on the southwest corner.
Okay.
Because it's one large continuous building.
Yeah. Um, but you don't have a date on this then, do you?
Well, because it was a pending municipal board appeal in 2020, so I'm speculating, but it was used for the brief that was prepared for the 2020 municipal board appeal.
Oh, I see. Okay. So this is as of the time of okay. Um, and you haven't updated the pictures to reflect the recent agreement at property and planning.
I'm not aware of the recent agreement of property and
Okay.
planning.
And in regard to the rest of the um, just looking, you have a kind of a, you don't have a regional picture shot of this. Perhaps the sketch on page 5, bottom of page 5, you were able to identify the other parcels owned by the same company.
Well, yeah, because they're just on the other side of Gillespie there.
Okay, and that's the very large block. I can get into my own, but I imagine there's no dispute that they own approximately 700,000 square feet of contiguous space in the area.
No dispute about that.
Okay. And the ratio of land to building that you can confirm that's on the low side for industrial.
Yeah, but I guess for the business, if it was an issue for the operations of the business, they wouldn't have done all the expansions that they've done in recent years.
I understand, but the act does specify that you're not taxing the business, you're taxing the real estate, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And I'm asking about access. So, to your knowledge, how did they get those pictures of page 6 of the semi-trailers into the site? Do you know the routing they had to take?
I'm not familiar with the routing that they have to take.
Okay. Has there ever been thought in the assessment department to amalgamate these roles?
I know that's been in discussion, but other than that, I have no other knowledge about this.
Okay. Well, I guess the reason I'm asking is you haven't inspected it, and does this property, to your knowledge, have the ability to operate independently?
Well, it's on separate role and separate title right now, so I'm assuming that it's integrated with other aspects of the operation, but business operations change, so I can't comment on the future. I'm just looking at the role right now.
That's a fair answer. We did have the pleasure of going through it a few months ago with one of your colleagues, so it's more fresh in my memory than yours. Sorry, I'm getting to the end of these questions. Page 11. So this was all done by the model.
That's correct.
And then the 1.5% vacancy. That's based on District 2, as the city indicates.
Yes.
And you can confirm that that extends from the north perimeter to the south perimeter along the entire east side of the city of Winnipeg.
The east side of the city, it doesn't include old St. Boniface, but the newer portions of the St. Boniface Industrial Park, yes.
And it's fair to say that in this particular District 2 or Area 2, that there are numerous sub-markets in the area. For example, the North Transcona, the South Transcona, St. Boniface Industrial, the South Perimeter, to name a few, as well as the corridor on Raleigh. There are several sub areas.
Well, it's all part of industrial region number 2. Yes.
Okay. Are these generally populated by owner occupants?
Yeah, 65% of industrial properties are owner occupied.
And how does the city collect vacancy information from owner occupied sites?
Look at all the data that's provided to us from the income and expense mailers. So if they inform us that an owner occupied property is vacant, then that'll be a part of our analysis with regards to also what industry leaders say for vacancy rates across the city of Winnipeg.
In capitalization rates, I'm now looking at page 13, and every category has the same range. Are they all applied the same way in the model, regardless of their usage?
Well, they're all categorized under industrial properties. There's different property types between, say, for example, flex warehouse or basic storage warehouse. But
in your application, the model's application, this is called a storage warehouse, correct?
Correct.
Now, in the pictures that you have provided, there are machines that appear to be making things. Isn't this better described as manufacturing?
Yeah, but the challenge that we have is because the basic premise between manufacturing or property type class for manufacturing and storage warehouses is that because there's so many owner occupied properties, we wouldn't be able to have enough good rents from a manufacturing process because the majority of them are owner occupied. So this is why we would take this type of property and categorize it as a storage warehouse.
See, we agree on many things. There are very few rents in manufacturing.
Which is why we use the storage warehouse rents for this.
Yes, but does an investor react to a manufacturing site the same as they would to a warehouse?
I think an investor would look everything on a site-specific basis to what works for their parameters.
On page 11, this has been divided into 3 premise IDs.
Yeah.
How many occupants are there?
Well, it's one. There's only one occupier for this entire building, and the breakdown in the leasable areas is a reflection of the quality of the new buildings that have existed.
But is it capable of being demised into 3 separate sections today?
Today it's not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Now, I know this has come up before, perhaps even last night for you, but doesn't the model provide an artificially high value by pitting in sections rather than dealing with the entire area as one?
Which is why I made a recommendation of $6.50.
Okay. And you mentioned in your report that your capitalization rates are supported by outside market market participants. Did you read any of the studies done by Collier, CBRE, and Cushman as to what they classify as an investment property in industrial?
I have seen it in the past.
Do they have manufacturing in their work?
Yeah, but then
they're tracking.
They don't track manufacturing, but the premise of a manufacturing plant and a storage warehouse are very similar.
Okay, and did you receive or read the notification you got from Collier's on the rates that you've applied here?
Could you re-ask that again? I don't understand the question.
Well, okay. In my evidence, it's in there, and there was a letter sent by the Vice President of Evaluation to the City of Winnipeg on using our rates, and also advising them not to use Q1 2023, regardless of the fact they have not permission to use any of it. But did you see that letter?
If it's similar to the letters that have been sent in the past, I have seen it, but that's an issue that Colliers needs to take up with the province of Manitoba and the Municipal Assessment Act.
Well, no, I'm sorry. Did the city not see the information and being made aware they're using an incorrect rate, they have made no adjustment to this table since being notified? Or do you know anything about this? If you don't know, just pass on the question. I'm just curious.
I'm not privy to those conversations, Mr.
Okay.
Newfield.
Yeah, thanks. I'm just wondering why no one reacted. Those are my questions.
Okay, Ms. Werhan, questions?
Not at this time, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stephenson.
No questions, thank you.
All right, I have no questions. So your presentation, Mr. Neufeld.
Okay, so the property is part of a very much larger campus, and I'm sorry the pictures don't do it justice, but on our page 3, we were outlining the major pieces of it, and you can see the subject is noted as 600 Goldsby, and then there's the Raleigh site and the additions on it. This I actually made this up 2 years ago. Since then, they've also acquired a further site on Raleigh north of this, and you can see it in the picture underneath the blue bubble without a name in it, and also the adjoining site on Kimberley. That's the old Polar Windows sites. So they're growing. They make heating and ventilation equipment for commercial uses. That is their business. They make it on the site. They export all around the world. A major market for them is the United States. And they're a Winnipeg-based company, always have been. And so what we think that these roles should have been combined, and we've been asking the assessor, why don't you do it? Because they have over 700,000 square feet, and none of these buildings operate independently. So they're not able to be marketed independently to another user. And to point to show you what we're where this occurs is I just want to point to the assessor's picture. It doesn't have blue bubbles on it on page I guess we'll go with page. What was that? Sorry, I missed the one with the big blue outlines. Top of page 4 and the bottom of page 4. So you see the irregular shape. Now on Goldsby, there's a cul-de-sac, and on that cul-de-sac, it's where the typing is for that says Goldsby Street in the with the white outline. That's the cul-de-sac, and there's an approach off the cul-de-sac to a property that is not the subject's property. That is to a different owner. There is no exit on Goldsby to anywhere on Price Industries land. We toured it with an assessor recently, and this had to all be closed off because when they got permission to do expansions in order to deal with the issues raised by the residential people living nearby, they agreed to certain restrictions, one of which was no access off Goldsby. The other access that appears to be on the site is on Neil, at the dead end on Neil. And I apologize, we did not have a picture for you. It was intended to have an access at that point, but I'm looking at the Google Earth picture right now, and the guy wires from the hydro lines are firmly in the middle of that access point. So it has been permanently closed. It is wide enough to get a car through, but not a semi-trailer. All access must come from the Raleigh entrances, which is another role. And on the picture, you can see that there's a pathway at the south end of 634 Raleigh. And this one is probably better demonstrated on my page 3. The pathway that goes along the south end of 634 Raleigh curves into the lot on Goldsby and then allows them to get semi-trailers onto the Goldsby site. In other words, there is no truck access to this site, and there is no vehicle access at all to this site anymore except through the front, which means it's landlocked. And marketable on its own is very, very questionable. What we decided to do in this case was to treat it as if it was a part of a whole, because as a whole, there is value to it. And that's why these should be amalgamated. Since you can't, the board does not have the power to do that. We will go on the hypothetical assumption from our perspective that they are part of a larger operation. And the other, those are some of the physical issues. The other physical issue is that this, the 1959 building was Wilson Auto Electric. It is a very low ceiling building, and I actually appraised it for the purchase in 2008, and it did sell arm's length transaction from Wilson Auto Electric to Price Industries, who later moved their real estate holdings into Anvil Properties. Those Anvil and Price are not arm's length. They're different divisions within the same trust, family trust. The they ended up demolishing some parts of the Goldsby site, but maintained the original triangular shaped building that you see at the southwest corner. And it is 9 feet clear. In the inside of it, there is a 14-foot building with a massive 5-foot old-fashioned 1959 truss that's about 5 feet high, because that's what the way they built them in 1959 for roof support. The engineering capabilities were such that in order to get a clear span, they went with thickness and size of the truss rather than engineering the span. I apologize. We do have pictures of it, and we did not provide them to you. I'm actually looking at the picture from my own appraisal of it in 2008. And I mention this because I'm an accredited appraiser, and this was for informing the owner of a proper price to ask for the site. So I have been in the site and numerous times. Since then, they added the addition, and as I mentioned, the conditions under the addition to the City of Winnipeg property and planning were to reduce any truck traffic that could impact the residents who are located across the rail line on the other side. In terms of market, and now, don't worry, I'm not going to say anything post-reference. You can make your own inference. This company manufactures steel and aluminum products. In 2017, then President Trump introduced tariffs on their product, which hurt their business immensely. By 2019, these tariffs had been lifted and they were able to return as normal. So this is a business who is highly vulnerable to the actions of outside individuals, as demonstrated in the past. Tariffs in this industry date back to Confederation, and the history of it is fascinating reading, but often done by misguided people. So I'm not talking about anything that's post-reference. I'm talking about the history. And would an investor care to invest in a property that made steel and aluminum? The value we put on it as part of the whole is, I was reading this and I have some issues with it. I think the rent should be lower, but I think we could live with the lower cap. So we're not going to change the value because the number is going to come out the same. As part of a whole, we're probably going to be in the $3 range, mid threes, and the cap's going to be better because it's an entire facility. So the math should work out very similar. So to make your life simple, I'm not changing anything. The vacancy rate is a citywide rate. There is no such thing as a St. Boniface or sorry, there is no such thing as a District 2 rate because there's 7-8 different sub-market areas. And this is in a very small sub-market. It does not have the mathematical capability of generating a reliable rate. The sampling size is far too small because in this particular area, the only ones you're going to look at are Price Industries and the Palliser Furniture ones, both owner-occupied sites. They provide no guidance for vacancy rates. The citywide rate is what we applied at 5%. And given the size of the building, it does not serve the local market nearby. It does not serve people in this neighborhood. It serves a global community, so 5%. On this particular one, we didn't look at the non-recoverables for the reason that we knew that this was part of a whole, and that's not the argument that is really the issue at stake. It's not a small matter of non-recoverables. It's a very large matter of being a part of a whole that is not marketable on its own. The shortfall rate is much higher than the city uses because we actually use the actual tax rate, which is the highest piece of any sort of a shortfall rate. The city's shortfall rates are the same no matter if they apply a rent of $2 or one of $10. That makes no sense if you realize that the shortfall is comprised primarily of carrying the property taxes and then the utilities. The cap rate applied at 8.25 is indicative of the manner in which this was done. The issues I mentioned were we worked from the Collier's cap rate, which I'll get to as a base at 6.5 for the best type of property, and then looking at it in terms of the residential adjacency, which has already impacted their operations. Multiple building sections, that irregular shapes. Here's a good question I always ask people when they look at a triangular building. Where would you put your desk and your furniture? That's all square. Everything is square. Triangles aren't good. Low land to building ratio, too large to be marketed for tenants, part of a larger complex. And then the age-related deficiencies in quality condition, which replaced our building height. So this was a look at it. I'd call it a bit more hypothetical. And there are some rent rates that we have below in page 4. And what we stress on these rates is they are from all over the city. Our major criteria on picking a rental rate is to find a clean rate. And when I mean clean, is there are too many rents on the market where there are tenant inducements, tenant improvements amortized in the rent. That's not real estate value. Under the definition of value, any money only derived from the rent of the property, not to pay back a loan, is considered rental income. These are clean deals. And there are clean deals and there are deals that have TI impacts on them. This is what our guidance was. And you can see we went with a wide range of sizes and of interest were some of the larger ones that are reported, and they range on the low end of the old Eaton's warehouse at $2 to one of the old furniture park sites at $6.45. So these do vary. And in a big building, the important thing to remember is on the marketplace, it's do the pieces fit? If you have a large site and you need to rent it, you're going to take a low rate. If you're a tenant looking for a large site, you're going to pay a high rate because that's the market equilibrium. It depends on matching the users to the market. There are so few places that an example in the furniture park ones is you have one at $6.45 and one at $3 on our chart. That's just on the basis of one that they had to rent out, and the other they had a tenant who needed a big space. And I happen to know very well of the deal at 125 Furniture Park, as it was my wife's cousin who did the deal. And actually this shouldn't be in here because there were a ton of TIs in the mix. But that's how we came about our rates. And moving along on page page 35 is where we took for the Collier's cap rate base, and this is an industrial class B from 6.5 to 7.5. 6.5 is for the best property. Our definitions for this are on page 38, and nowhere in the definitions does it say anything about manufacturing. There are, I'm trying to think, I've maybe come across 2 or 3 manufacturing rents over time, and they're all very much at the low end because landlords know that it's a harsher usage on their buildings, and whereas the warehousing is not. They're not the same market. On page 39 is a letter from the Collier's head office explaining the cap rate. But before looking at that, the top of page 38, that's the disclaimer that's missing from the city's presentation. They do not have permission to use it. We are not liable for their mistakes. They must determine and make their own decisions on it. And in this case, they used something. And then on page 39, we sent them a letter saying there's a
Mr.
mistake.
Neufeld, all this information is post-reference in your Collery's report. It's from the third quarter of 2023.
I don't think you're reading this right.
Well, I'm looking at the document right now.
You said all of this evidence. Don't
No,
say
I
all
on
of this
page-
evidence.
on page
Why don't you
30,
just
the
focus
information
on
that
the
you're
middle
presenting right
column?
now
Okay, can
is
Mr.
post-reference,
Neufeld,
Mr.
can
Neufeld.
you let Mr. Frolick state his objection?
Sure.
If I'm looking at on your page 36 of your document, Mr. Neufeld, it says Winnipeg Quarter 3, 2023.
Well, why aren't you looking at the one I said, which was page 35?
Well, but the point is, the page 35 has the one point of it. It's quarter 2, and that's you know, and you know what? I apologize for that, Mr. Neufeld. I'm sorry.
Okay. And
It's
I mean, your comment, I understand your comment, but what we're saying is that the precise one at the time of the reference date was incorrect. So we looked at the one prior to it, and we looked at the one after that, just to confirm a continuation of a trend, not as something we're relying on. So and we're just restating, don't use that one. And the pure truth of it, you've probably heard me tell the story already 100 times, but there was mistakenly quarter 1 2023 was a repeat from a previous period that was slipped in there and no one double checked it, and I found it, and for my punished for my finding out about it, now I have to write the report with my people here. So you're going to see you're going to be talking to the author in the future next cycle. Page 40 is attached to this, and this was an explanation of why the rates that we listed were not correct. These are Bank of Canada rates. This is what Bank of Canada charges the banks, and you can see that in that years prior it was half a point. And then on our reference date, it had risen to 4.75%. So that's the Bank of Canada prime. Lenders are higher. And a cap rate is tied to the interest rate, much like in all markets, it's tied to the interest rate. And what we're trying to inform people is that rates went up. And if you're going to look at cap rates, find out how much they're paying on their interest, because the cap's all about having the ability to pay the mortgage on it. It's really simple. It's not a magic number that you apply to things. It's merely the ability of from the rental revenue to cover the mortgage, and you use the interest rate as your primary indication of it. The last thing on my for today is on page 50 is just some pictures of what is represented by classifications of office. The top is Class A industrial flex warehouse, 27-foot clear, 5 pallets fit in it, 32 exterior height. Develop it to an office if you want, or anything else. Bay sizes either 3,000 or 6,000 feet, which represent post widths of 30 feet or 60 feet with 100-foot depth, semi-trailer access one side, vehicle on the other side. That's what investors are chasing at the 6%. A B is a well-made single tenant industrial here, and modern design. Lots of amenities, like that's a daycare in front. That's seen as a B industrial single tenant. And then the C is the multi-tenant, mostly jobbers and contractors sites. And our site is more of the Class D variety, which is a single tenant industrial site with not very good ceiling heights, as the picture shows. This one's a bit of an exaggeration, but it was the closest I could find what represents a D. The subject would be a D site, and that's why we went with what we did. That's my presentation.
Okay, and on your objection there, Mr. Frolick, It appears to be to me to be a typo. Uh, that it does say Q3 2023, but the text talks about Q1 2023.
That's fine. It's just that, I'm going through the document and it's, you know, you're looking at one, I was looking at the next page, right? So
Okay. Thank you. Questions, Mr. Froelich?
yes, a lot of the rents that you're using are significantly dated from the reference date. Why didn't you use the more recent rents for the that are closer to the reference date as opposed to using an older rents for your analysis?
Well, one of the things that characterized some of the recent rents we saw was that they were loaded with inducements because people were scrambling after there were two types of rents that happened between 2020 and 2023. The first part in 2020 was a lot of government rents to get space for protective equipment. Those were panic driven, so we never used those. And after that, there was the vacancies really started to hit in mid 2022, and inducements were quite excessive. It was more. It would typically you would see in the past an inducement in industrial or warehousing might be $5-10 a foot over a 5 or 10 year term, which is maybe $1 impact on the rental rate. But they started to rise to $30 and $40 a foot to get tenants in to fill up the empty space. And then on top of that, most of the ones were being written in Centerport, which was a change in use, transportation facilities along Canada Way, which the transportation warehousing people were moving out there because it was better on the semi-trailer access. They didn't have to drive through the city. Imagine a semi coming from Calgary, stopping in Winnipeg, and then going south to the United States. If you have to drive through the city to Raleigh, you've lost about 45 minutes going in, getting out. Whereas you're stopping Canada Way, it's going to be 5 to 10 minutes to get in and out back on the major routes. So operators looked at that in terms of utility and favor those sites. So you can tell we weren't using sites that were that those were our criteria. The tenant inducements, the site motivation. We tended to pick, if you notice this, all interior city sites, nothing on the periphery. And the other point on this is as you get to a larger facility, they don't move with anybody's idea of market. It's nothing to do with we think we can get more for it. It's all about matching a user to a space. And I saw rents 20 years ago at $10 for big space because that's all they could get. I also saw rents at $1 when there was a glut on the market and buildings that emptied out. So when you're moving independently of time, the market time, it's because your product is outside the normal average size. In Winnipeg, our average size of industrial is 30,000 feet. As you rise above that, then you become impacted by issues other than time.
So when you speak of tenant inducements, does the legislation in Manitoba include tenant inducements in the valuation process?
The legislation in Manitoba does not exist for that thing within the act. That's the legislation.
In terms of the previous municipal board decisions?
Previous municipal board decisions are been dealt with solely the inducement on the operating income of the subject property. So if you brought in a subject property and said, "Oh, last year I spent $70,000 on commissions and $100,000 on inducements," that was disallowed because we've already given you a 5% non-recoverable, which you can amortize over time. That is the extent of the legislation. Now, then when it went to dealing with inducements on properties specifically under appeal, they were also not willing to accept that. However, as a comparable, it has to be accepted, and it's never been the subject of an appeal or a decision on looking at comparables, because in the comparable you're testing the market for market conditions, not how much of a kickback you got.
Going back to 125 Furniture Park, your 4.75 rent is $1.50 off than the best comparable in the neighborhood. Because if you look at 125 Furniture Park, that's an older building. Aspects of this is an older building. So
that one shouldn't have hit the list. I didn't make this list. I told you, it's my wife's cousin. It's her company. They left the building and then they had to get another building and under severe time, and they also got a really nice inducement on that to move in. I think it was $25 a foot. Shouldn't have been in there. It doesn't fit the definition of market value.
Okay. With regards to vacancy, other professional agencies such as Cushman Wakefield, Colliers, Davidson Young, do they do a vacancy analysis for the eastern part of the city of Winnipeg?
We have a separate report on a vacancy, and I don't think anyone's ever put it in the evidence, but our industrial division puts out an annual snapshot, and we tend to look citywide. I don't ever think we've done a division. The Johnson report here does.
I'm very confident that other agencies do provide differences between north, south, and west and east in their documentation. But if you don't recall,
I recall. I mean, I've seen the report, and the writer sits 10 feet away from me. We will anecdotally mention certain areas, but the database on that is different than what's done here. And also, just for the record, Cushman has one. I don't think it comes out all the time, and that's done by McGarry's firm. But the CBRE, they don't really have an office here. This is published in Calgary, and when I interviewed the writer who did it, he said, "No, I just looked at the Johnson report."
In terms of cap rates, and were there a lot of economic activity that in terms of business transactions when interest rates started going up in June of 2022?
No, actually, I had a piece of information that I was thinking about submitting as evidence, but I don't have to since you asked this. Q3 2022 saw a significant drop in industrial interest and a higher raising of vacancy rates across Canada. And this was all the hangover from COVID and home delivery. So all of the action happened in 20 and 21, and by middle 22 had tailed off and it had started to decline. And like I said, part of it was the interest rate I showed you, part of it was the demand.
So then how do you develop a cap rate on if there's the very limited transactions that had taken place after this period of time? Because if you're actually looking at doing a cap rate analysis on sales after 2022, like from our information, there was hardly any sales that had taken place, and so we weren't able to develop any cap rate studies during this period of instability of higher interest rates.
Yes, and we are in 100% agreement there. We knew that there were very, very limited sales, and so what we ended up turning to was in our report was going back to the old days of market equity to see what the differential was between interest rates and cap rates, and as an appraiser, I entered the profession just as direct capitalization was taking away the mortgage equity method, but in the past, that's the only way that they'd ever been appraised. What's the differential between the interest rate and the cap rate? And so we went back to that as one method. And our division in Saskatchewan was actually the one who publishes that report. And then we relied more on our brokers to talk about what are the deals people are considering, what are the offerings, what is the interest. Lots of deals were written, a few went through on that side, and then the last way is to make an extrapolation or an analysis of the rates that we do have, not based on time so much, but as other market issues. There were some sales of other sites. So, for example, still multifamily sales, but the average cap went up about 0.6% due to interest rates. So if you had a cap that was normally at 5.4, it would go to 6%. So otherwise, about an 11% increase in the rate. So that's an indication of general market investment. As well, there are publicly traded corporations we do a fair business with, and the REITs. They transact amongst themselves, and you often use brokers. Their sales do not get reported on titles because they go through share transfers. They showed this interest, and just I'll give you an example of one of those in my report. It's not for this market sector, but it's for office on page 41. There were a few transactions. It was 155 Carlton and 363 Broadway. They're not going to show up at titles. They were share transfers. So we do have access to another line of information. Now, sometimes in share transfers, you have to worry about retained earnings and undeclared expense write-offs. When these organizations, the REITs, are transferring, they're always really clean transactions because they don't put anything on there that doesn't belong. The only thing to worry about there is their investor portion on it. What's their expectation? Who's managing them? If you're owned by, for example, Ontario Teachers Credit Union, they have a really low rate of return, like 2-3%, so they can do crazy deals, low deals. But that's about it. So I'm boring you all, but I could talk about this forever because this is the market we live in. But that's the background on it. Lots of different sources.
No other questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stephenson, questions?
Does the property on Golspie adjacent to this property have semis driving in and delivering to it?
All the sites are serviced from all the buildings in the campus are serviced by the semi-trailer entrance is on the south side of 634 Raleigh.
Simple question: do they access that property adjacent to it?
Yes, they all come through the same site to all of their buildings from that same entranceway.
No, I'm talking about the property not owned by this across Neil Avenue from this. Do semis access and deliver to that
That's
property?
not their site across Neil.
Because you were saying that semis cannot access that road through Golspie down there, and I'm wondering if you know of whether semis access the adjacent property.
Oh, the adjacent property.
Yes.
Yes, they do.
Oh, okay.
I'm looking at a Google Street View of it. So Neil dead ends at the eastern edge of our subject property, and then there's a large brick building at that corner.
I thought it wasn't possible for semis to go down there, is what you had claimed before. That's why I was asking the question.
Not for price. They had to fence off. They had a property and planning submission to do their development, and as part of it, they had to change all semi-trailer access to Raleigh.
So the access and no access points along Neil are specific to price, then, right?
That is correct.
As opposed to another person coming in, and they would be able to likely put access points to this building.
Well, the building
if the building was sold.
Yeah, the building on the south side is in operation. There's semi-trailers parked on the street, parked up front. It's a packaging company. And I guess everything they're doing is legal and conforming, because they haven't changed their usage. Price changed their usage and added building sizes, and as a result had agreed to the restrictions and access on the interior sites.
Okay, and then with respect to the rents you're quoting, like I'm trying to pick a rent for this owner-occupied property that we have to compare to the market. So you give a list. What are your three favorites for comparables out of your list? So you don't summarize anything for us. You just give us a list. So
yeah, no,
I
haven't put my mind to it.
Okay, then don't answer. That's okay.
No, but I think the best ones to look at are the 770 Pandora operations, because this is a part of a larger building that they ended up subdividing, and the usage is very similar. It's a mix of warehousing and industrial and manufacturing, and it's close by.
I asked for three.
There's two there.
770 Pandora, and what other two?
1093 Sherwin is a manufacturing facility in St. James, Reliance Plastics. 11 Plymouth is not, I wouldn't use, because that's Amazon. 1245 Border, that's an older lease with a shipping facility. That's not bad. There's a couple of these ones on Border that are in a complex that's see, all the 1347, 1377 Borders are a mix of sizes, but this is one with a campus of 7 buildings and limited access for semi-trailers and low ceiling spaces.
Thank you very much. I know, sorry, cap rate again. You're choosing a cap rate that's outside of the range provided by the city and Colliers. And I know you guys already had a discussion about it, like what comparables are you using to go 825 besides interest rate and besides limitation that are self-imposed by price on access? What else? What other factors would come into considering that really high cap rate?
Well, it's not a high cap rate in the manufacturing world. All of the data that's been presented and shown to you is on a different product.
I couldn't see a summary. Or so you're saying that what the classification doesn't define this property is what you're saying?
There is our definitions are right after our cap rates.
Yeah, I saw that.
We don't cap rate industrial buildings and track them because there are so few, like manufacturing, I should say. There's would be a significant adjustment to it to account for a shorter remaining economic life. We did have, again, new evidence, but I did find 2 cap rate sales after this was published. One is on Mission and the other is on Chevrier. Similar style buildings, similar dimensions, campus type, and they were one was 8.6 and the other was 8.9. This was after a bit of search, and I'm afraid to present them because I want to get the exact transaction date on it because it's really close to the reference date.
So then we can't consider those if you don't know if they're post-reference or not?
Well, you're asking me a question and I'm answering.
Well, you're stating a fact, and I want to know whether it's post-reference.
It's a fact.
That's why.
It's a fact. I'm stating it because you asked a question, and I'm stating it from.
Is it post-reference?
What we know in our business. No, I haven't determined if they're fully post-reference because it has to do with the date of the deal.
So we won't determine that what your comment then is. Thank you for your questions.
One of them was impacted by a delay at titles. I'm trying to find out when it was submitted at titles.
Thank you for your question. Thank you for your answers, Rocky.
Okay, Ms. Werhan.
I do not, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, I got a question on your calculations. You, in your On page 1, you say non-recoverable or structural reserve 3%, but then you have a value of $11,000. But 3% is
Yeah,
$16,000.
I see that.
So,
The exact formula that, this was an Excel spreadsheet. So I found the formula. The person who drew it up had the 2% embedded in the far right line rather than using it as off the 3%. So you're right, it should be a lower NOI. We're not going to change it because again, I feel very strongly that when you make a presentation to the board, if you're going to make a change, you should never go lower because we're here to try to find a middle ground. It would be lower, yes, the lower
okay,
value.
thank you. I've got no further questions. So, summation, Mr. Frolick.
Yeah, summation goes as following. When we look at the valuation of the property and the market rents being used, we feel that we have a balanced approach with regards to the aspect that this building has a newer portion and an older portion. The newer portion would derive a higher rent in the marketplace. It would benefit from new technologies to keep it more efficient. And subsequently, market evidence shows that newer buildings do command higher rents. A lot of the rents used by the applicant are significantly dated. And even though, and he places little weight on the 625 rent for 125 Furniture Park, we have a lot of rents that are the older buildings that are in that 625 range. With regards to instability in the marketplace, with regards to our cap rates, a lot of our cap rates were done for the 39 months prior to April 1st, 2023. So that would include data from 2020, 2021, and 2022 before the major increase in interest rates would have an impact on cap rate. So that's our analysis. Thank you very
Okay,
much for your time.
Mr. Neufeld, a short summation.
Thank you. Sure. The major issues, the size and the quality and the cap rate. The size, it should be considered as part of the whole, probably outside what the board can deal with. That's something that within the assessment department that administratively we should try to get changed if we can. As to the quality issues, it's landlocked, and it doesn't matter why, or it doesn't matter who did it or why they did it. It happened to it. The other last year, I ran into somebody who kicked the side of his car in and said, well, it doesn't count because I did it. No, it still counts. You're still damaged. It's still worth less because it doesn't matter who did it. It physically exists, and it's not reversible. It's landlocked, and it's part of a larger parcel. It's not separately marketable whatsoever. Now, in terms of the rents, you have to look at sites as comparables, and it kind of threw me at a loss in that question because I can't think of any comparables that are this badly impacted by dependence on a major site. This is an outside the market influence and something we have to deal with. I think we dealt with it appropriately in the way we handled it. Last comment on capitalization rates. Nobody tracks industrial rates. It's not a desirable property on the market. As a result, it will always be higher than the rest of the industrial rates, which are not really industrial. They are for warehousing. Warehousing is linked to retail, not making stuff. They store stuff so they can bring it to the store and sell it. It operates on a different principle in our marketplace, linked to a different part of the market. Making stuff is what we're talking about. And there is no category. And I appreciate Mr. Florrick's comments on it. Yeah, tough and hard to come by on that. But in principle, all market prices are impacted by interest rates. If anybody was buying a house in 2020 and they got a 2% mortgage, they're going to pay more for the house. If the same house goes on the market on April 1st, 2023, and the interest rates are at 4%, they're going to pay less for the house. That's real simple. if we equate it to our own experiences in residential markets, interest rates go down, you can afford to pay more for the house, you buy a bigger house, or you pay a higher price and you get market competition. I think it's pretty simple in that aspect, and thank you for your patience and all my lecturing here. I'll get off my soapbox, but I was invited. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll take a break until 10:30 and then come back and hear our final three properties. All right, welcome back. We shall continue on. Can you swear in the Mr. Navarro?
Of course, Mr. Chair. Okay, Mr. Applicant, please state your full name.
Marcelo Navarro,
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right. Our next property is 452 Dover Court, and the city has asked for a non-co-op with this. So, Mr. Froelich, can you read in the basic information and then proceed with the non-co-op?
Yep, sure thing. Just bear with me here for a sec. Property is 241814 is the file number. Roll number is 03065156600. Properties on 452 Dover Court Drive. The assessed value that we have for this property is $3,496,000. We are asking for non-compliance. On page 2, the assessment department made the request to for the applicant. Actually, we sent out the original letter on April 13th, 2023. The applicant made a request for an extension. So in these sort of circumstances, we don't do a registered letter because the property owner has taken the necessary steps to ask for an extension. Unfortunately, an extension, the document wasn't received, which is why we're asking for non-compliance. On as you can see on the City of Winnipeg letter that was sent out on April 13th, 2023, requesting the initial property sale and income and expense mailer for 452 Dover Court. The due date was May 4th, 2023. And that's the following documentation that we have for the request for non-compliance for this property.
Okay. Just making a note of that. Mr. Navarro, any questions on the non-co-op?
Not regarding the non-co-op. However, we had requested that the file be confirmed. That's about all we have.
Yeah, I recognize that, but the city have asked for non-cooperation, so it may be moot at this point, but nonetheless, we have to make a ruling on the non-co-op. Okay. Mr. Stephenson, any questions on the non-co-op?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Warhun?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I guess we'll have to confer briefly on the non. Oh, Ms. Navarro, you're making the presentation on the non-co-op.
I don't have any evidence. I reached out to the client. I believe they're on vacation somewhere south, so they're not back yet.
Okay. All right, so then we'll take a brief break and make a ruling on the non-co-op then. All right, thank you. Welcome back. The board has deliberated and we will grant the non-co-op. Normally in this circumstance, the burden of proof will be placed on the applicant, but I understand they're going to be requesting confirmation. So for expediency, Mr. Froelich, can you just read in your evaluation?
Yep, for sure. Just bear with me here for 1 sec. Our valuation goes as follows. Subject property size is well, there's 2 income streams for this property. And so the first income stream is the office portion of it, which is a leasable area of 3115. The rent we have is $16.79, comes up with a potential rent of $52,301. Using 6% vacancy, 3% expenses, and an $8 shortfall rate, we come up with a net operating income of $46,193. Utilizing a cap rate of 5.2%. This portion of the building is $888,000. I have some red comparables just below, 12 offices in the southwest quadrant. Then we have the storage warehouse portion of the building. You have two spaces that are 7,000 and 8,000 square feet for a total of 15,130. Potential rent is 170,133. Utilizing 4.5% vacancy, 3% expenses, and a cap rate of 595. We have an income of 2,603,000, plus there's additional building value of $5,000. The rent comparables are seen on the bottom of page 7, and an overview of the entire valuation for the properties on page 8, which is $3,496,000. Thank you.
All right. Mr. Navarro, I guess any questions on that?
Sorry, I was muted. No questions, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Werhun,
None, thank you.
Mr. Stephenson.
No questions, thank you.
Okay, just out of curiosity, what is an additional building value of 5,000?
You know what? Let me reference my document, and I could probably take a look at it. If Mr. Navarro has any insight into the building, where that may be, because I think it's a storage shed.
There seems to be a shed on the
On the
What,
very
so-
back portion of the building. So
Yeah.
southwest quadrant, there's a shed.
Yeah, okay. I understand. All right, and Mr. Navarro, I understand your question, you're requesting confirmation.
That's correct.
All right. So then we shall proceed down the street a little bit or up the street, 474 Dover Court. Okay, so on 474 Dover Court, Mr. Froelich.
File number is 24-2108. Roll number is 03065156-800. The assessed value for that we have for this property is $2,444,000. Property was built in 1990. It has a ceiling height of 25 feet with a leasable area of 15,929. You're asking that the value would be confirmed. Property is owner occupied, and the property owner has completed the income expense mailers. And for his portion can be seen on pages 2 and 3. Page 4 shows a picture of the subject property. I have not inspected this property. And that's the exterior picture, and there's the general location. We have no other pictures on file for this property because it's owner occupied. It's never been out for a lease. And so that's all I have for pictures. In terms of, we have this property listed as a flex warehouse space. The main area is 14,203 with a market rent of $10.50. And the storage mezzanine area is in a leasable area of 1726 with a rent of $634. Total potential rent is $160,075. Utilizing a 4.5% vacancy rate, expenses at 3%, shortfall at $4. You come up with a net operating income of $145,419. The overall cap rate is 5.95%, and we come up with a value of $2,444,000. For rent comparables of flex warehouse and space in the neighborhood, I have properties on Waverly, on Fennell, Lorimer, Wilkes, and on Henlow Bay. So they're all in the southwest quadrant. Our oldest lease is from 2018, with our newest lease being from 2021. They're all of similar leasable areas. So the leasable area range is from 9,000 square feet up into 19,000 square feet. The wall heights vary between 20 and 27 square feet. And the effective year builds that we have is first one's at 1975. Then we have 2014, 205, and some older ones at 1973 and 1999. The ranges are from $9 or from $9 range up to $13 range. And we're looking at the cap rate for this property. Our cap rate is 5.95%, and it falls in the range of industrial, a single tenanted building at between 5.3 and 7.3% is our 20th to 80th percentile, and it falls within the range from other publications within the city of Winnipeg. That concludes my presentation, and I'm open to questions. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Navarro?
No, I think the only question I have is this was all model generated.
That's correct.
Okay, that's the only question I have.
Okay, Ms. Werhan,
None, thank you.
Mr. Stephenson.
No questions, thank you.
Okay, so Mr. Navarro, your presentation then.
Okay. This is 474 Dovercote Drive. On page 2, you can see our assessment summary with the property description. If you turn to page 6 and 7, you can see some pictures of the overhead map. This is just in that Scurfield Boulevard area. And on page 12, you can see our comparisons. We have a blended rent of $10.59. That equals $168,724 in potential. In terms of vacancy, shortfall, and non-recoverables, we're not disputing any of these, so we haven't adjusted those figures from what the market says. So we have a net operating income of $153,430, and we've applied a 6.75 cap rate to this, with an indicated value of $2,273,034. And in terms of the capitalization rate, you can see our capitalization rate table on page 17. We've also submitted our capitalization rate study. So our B class goes from 650 to 7.50. We've given this one a 6.75 again. In the appendix, we have the property parameters and also the income and expenses that were submitted along with this property. So I am open for questions.
The questions, Mr. Navarro.
What's the cutoff between an investment grade A and an investment grade B property?
Most of the A's tend to be newer multi-tenanted properties. So that's one important factor. If it was a single occupant property, it would have to be a newer, slightly higher wall heights, good shipping facilities. All of those things would have to be met. So the next property that you see, we classified at the top end of our B class, but generally the most telling sign is if you have a newer multi-tenanted property, that's generally when we flip it to an A.
But isn't there more risk with a multi-tenanted property as opposed to a single tenanted property?
No, I believe that's in the reverse. No, I think you would have more risk with a single tenanted property, simply because if it goes dark, it's 100% vacant, whereas multi-tenanted properties can absorb some vacancy. And obviously, the larger they are in terms of their tenancies, for example, if you have more than a 10-unit building, obviously you can absorb more vacancy and so on as it gets larger and larger.
Okay, but the history of but if an owner occupied property or a single tenanted is in a solid ground, wouldn't it have wouldn't have more stability?
I mean, I'm not looking at this from the owner perspective. This is a fee simple approach. So we're assuming that the exercise assumes a tenanted property, whether it's owner occupied or not. So
No other questions. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Stephenson, questions?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Warhan?
My questions have been answered. Thank you.
I'm just writing down your requested amount. Let's see, is there anything I noted? Nope, no questions. Okay, thank you for that property. Now we come to 310 the debates. And I understand, Mr. Navarro, you will have a preliminary issue on this, but I'll let Mr. Froelich begin, and then you can raise your objection when the time comes. Okay, so Mr. Froelich, on 310 debates.
Just let me close up this one here. And file number is 241680. Roll number is 060943611715. Address is 310 Debates. We have an assessed value of $14,406,000. Property was built in 2008 with 24-foot ceiling heights. We have a leasable area of 74,196. Property owner has, okay, should I stop here? And we're asking for the assessed value to be confirmed.
No, keep reading in your.
Okay, no
I
problem.
understand it has to deal with one of the leases you're using.
Yeah, and with regards to this, I understand where the applicant's coming from. And so what I am going to do, and I'm going to show, just bear with me here for 1 sec, because I have 310 debates.
Oh, I think it's on your separate entry there where the lease period is post-reference.
Yeah, and so it's a continuation. And so because I found the mailer to be very confusing, because the point of contention is with regards to, it says as of January 24th, 2024, there's a lease in place of 74,196. But if you scroll down, it says that the start date for this is November 1st, 2022. And so that's where the confusion came across from my end, where I'm not trying to lead the board astray, but in the same regards, like when we looked at the first portion of this here, the initial lease that was taking place was for $9.05, and that lease was from December 13th, 2017 to March 16th, 2023 at $9.05. And then as we move further down this lease per se, it's showing that as of January 1st, 2023, the lease in place is at $11.50. And so that's where I was confused, because portions of it, the lease is starting in November, and then this portion here is showing at $11.50. And so it's not like I'm trying to lead the board astray. And then on the next page here on page 2, I'm like on the bottom of page 2, I have that 905, but I'm also showing the $11.50 that is effective January 1st, 2023. And so and that's where, and then on page 3, I made a bigger version of this, where page 3, well, this is the part here that I double checked here. So we had the portion of the lease expiring starting on November 1st, 2022 and 1185. So it's not like I'm looking for the 1185, but I'm just trying to share the information that I came across. So if that's the issue, I have no problem taking that back, but it's just that there was, I was confused by it. So if the applicant could give me some application or just confirm with me that the rent is $11.50, then I'll be fine.
Okay, Mr. Navarro, we kind of going on without hearing the nature of your objection. So can you state the nature of your objection?
So I think it would be quite obvious that the rent started at January 1, 2024. So that would have been a renewal at that point, and there would have been a gap in between there where they just continued with the same rent until the end of the year. My objection is not with the rent that's in place. Obviously, it's with the fact that the information actually comes from a post-reference date source, and it's pointing to a rent that started in January of 2024. So I'm not sure what else I can say about that. So most leases have some type of clause that allows them to continue up to a certain period if there is a renewal to be made. So my understanding is that this rent continued until that lease was renewed. But I mean, at this point, the damage has already been done. So I don't see why we even need to discuss it. I mean, the assessor has already disclosed this information.
Yeah, it's a little regrettable, but the board will disregard any reliance on any post-reference information and not take it into our deliberations. Um, easier,
And I
easier to say.
apologize for the confusion, because you could see where there's the contradicting information here. And so, you know, if initially the lease had ended on the very first page of our document, we have the lease ending on March 16th, 2023. And then all of a sudden, I have another piece of documentation showing that the lease is now, as of January 1st, 2023, as a part of the step up, $11.50. You know, I just want to make sure that that was stated, and I do apologize for
Okay, we'll move.
There's my confusion with regards to the start date and trying to make sense of it all.
We'll move on and we'll disregard any
Okay,
post-reference information. So can you lead us through your valuation then?
yep, for sure. And so the next part of my valuation is that there was a Park REIT sale with regards to the sale of this property. It was a shared sale, and the valuation in this document shows that the assessed value, the purchase price for this property on March 17th, 2023 was $14,200,000. So, and that's when we look at that and we look at the market rents that it's generating, you know, we feel that our assessment's quite fair. Property is located in the St. Boniface Industrial Park in the eastern portion of the building here. There are pictures on page 6. I've never inspected this building, but the property is shown on page 7, just overview of the property. The market rents that we have here, so the total leasable area we have is 74,196. We have a potential rent of 833,960, using 1.5% vacancy loss, 3% for expenses, and a 5.5 cap rate. We come up with a value of 14,406,000. I got some comparable properties of newer warehouse spaces in the area. Began debates, discovery, and debates. They're showing within the range, but some of these leases are signed a bit older. And I think the current lease is best reflective of the performance of this property. Our subsequent cap rate that we've used for this property is 5.5%. And because it's a newer property, it does fall within the range of our 20th to 80th percentile. And that concludes my formal presentation. Thank you.
Right. Questions, Mr. Navarro?
Okay, where do I start? You know what? I'm going to start with the actual sale.
Yep.
Mr. Frolik, you would agree that most sales that are presented as arm's length sales are typically fee simple registered sales, and these are sales that are registered through land titles, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, now you've presented something here of a share sale, which we're not denying may have happened. However, have you actually analyzed this share sale?
Yeah, the actual documentation for that, I have not analyzed it, but there's Park REIT has a financial responsibility to share correct information if they're doing a published document with regards to their properties. And so I take merit in the fact that they wouldn't mislead their shareholders by putting an incorrect purchase price for this property.
That said, the background research has still not been done by your department, nor has a sales questionnaire gone out to the owner, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And lastly, regarding the sale, you are aware that they bought an entire portfolio, correct?
Yeah, and I have the portfolio listed here.
And typically portfolios are not even looked at, correct?
We use the market evidence with regards to our market rents to show that, and our evaluation process to show that our assessed value is within the range of the subject property. Because a lot of times with these type of properties, we have situations where the assessed values for these properties are lower than the actual marketplace has taken place. And when we come across a document like this, it informs us that we're within the range of what this type of property would sell for in the marketplace.
Okay, so that said, that's actually not what I asked you. I asked you specifically, do you look at portfolio sales?
Well, I thought I did answer the question, because we use portfolio sales as a backup to our income approach to valuation. And so what happens is the primary source is developing or looking at the market rents, looking at the vacancy and the cap rates. And then what will end up happening if this is our valuation for this property, and then if we come across supporting documentation that supports it, it just confirms that we're within the range of what this property should be valued at from an assessment perspective.
Okay, I mean, you as an assessor should probably be aware that, for example, the IAAO standards actually caution against using portfolio sales. You are aware of that?
But that's not my primary focus. I'm not presenting the portfolio sales as my number one piece of evidence. I'm using the portfolio sales in support of our income approach to value.
Okay. You know what? I'm going to just leave it at that. Mr. Frolik, regarding your own cap rate, this cap rate actually that you've suggested here, I'm just trying to flip to the page where you have your workup.
5.95%.
Yeah. 5.5%.
5%, sorry.
Okay. So in total, this property moved up from last cycle 53%. Now I realize that you are banking on this sale being kind of your supporting evidence for this, but has the market actually shifted 53% from last cycle?
Well, there's two distinct aspects of the market that had taken place. And so prior to the summer of June of 2022, cap rates were very, very low. And there was a lot of market activity with regards to supporting lower cap rates, because we collect data from April 1st, 2023, going backwards to 39 months with regards to our cap rate analysis. And then what happened is, after the summer of 2022 happened, we didn't have enough good information to develop cap rates that were more reflective of the high interest rate environment. And some from there is like, we didn't have the data to produce newer cap rates and reflection of this. So when we did our cap rate analysis, we looked at, we had our information and we combined that with industry leaders of what their cap rates were to come up with our cap rate.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of the industry leaders that you're talking about, and I don't know if you're talking about this as, I assume, an industrial B.
Well, I wouldn't consider this industrial B. I would consider this to be industrial A. It's newer built, high ceiling heights, built in 2008.
Okay.
Even based on your criteria, I'm pretty sure that, in our previous discussions, you would quantify this as industrial A.
Is this a multi-tenanted property?
No, it's not.
Okay.
But yeah, I think yeah.
I get your point. So I know that you just touched upon that in terms of the marketplace and what was happening with interest rates at the time of the reference date, but you will agree that there is a correlation between interest rates and capitalization rates?
Yes, I would.
Okay. And you just admitted to the department simply not having enough data at the time to actually, I guess, explore that a little bit further, correct?
Yeah, well, markets don't like instability. And starting from, and because inflation was high, the federal government felt it had to take a handle of inflation, which is why they were very aggressive with regard to their approach of increasing interest rates.
Okay. Those are my questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Ms. Warhan?
Mine were answered. Thank you.
Mr. Stephenson?
No questions, thank you.
All right, I have no questions. So, Mr. Navarro, your presentation.
Okay, so this is 310 debates. On page 2, you can see the assessment summary. And on page 6 and 7, you can see the pictures of the property and the general location in the map on page 7. Property description on page 9. And the rents that we've looked at for the subject on page 13. So we've gone with the actual rent in place at the time, which was extended to the end of the year, $11.50 per square foot. This is a larger warehouse area, 74,196. In terms of the vacancy shortfall, non-recoverables, that's not really a factor. It's not really experiencing any type of vacancy. So we've just adjusted for the market vacancy in this case. So on page 20, you can see the income approach workup. That is 74,196 square feet, $11.50 rent. Again, that is the actual, which we think is the best representation of the market for that. 1.50% vacancy, $4 shortfall, 1% non-recoverables, and 2% structural other. The net operating income is $810,790, and the capitalization rate is $650. The end result is $12,473,689, or $12,474,000. Beyond that, we have the property specifics and the income expenses that were submitted by the owner. And I'm open for questions.
Okay, questions, Mr. Schrolik?
I actually have no questions. It's just an issue with regards to cap rate, and we've discussed that quite thoroughly.
Okay, Mr. Stephenson,
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Warhun.
No, thank you.
Okay, I just got a question about the sale. Your price is about $2 million less than the sale price. Why would that be?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure what the share price actually includes. So we've had no opportunity to actually look at that share sale. We didn't even know it occurred. However, what I will comment on is that this is a portfolio sale, and I know that we've tried to present portfolio sales in the past and have been met with great objection from the other side. So I don't know why in this case it would be allowed. The standards are clear in terms of portfolio sales. They are to be approached with caution, and even more so the issue of a share sale, because exactly we don't know what's actually included in that sale. It's not like a registered land sale where the improvements in the land are registered and there's an oath taken that is signed that says that that is representative of the market value of the land and improvements. We don't know what liabilities the property had, and we've had no time to examine that in any way. And I doubt the assessor has had time to actually examine that as well. So the use of share sales is, from our perspective, it's unless you really know what's going on in that share sale and you've had firsthand conversations with the owners about what that share sale included or excluded, I don't know how it can be viewed as being valid. As mentioned, the typical sales that we research and we look at are registered through land titles exclusively. So is it $2 million? Probably, but it's also part of a portfolio, a large portfolio that's sold. So we don't know how much they allocated to each property and for what reasons. So I would think that that's my response.
Okay, so if you're basically saying that there is a lump sum total and it's just an allocation amongst those various properties that are.
Yeah, I don't even know, to be honest, Mr. Chair. So the issue is first of all, if it was a portfolio sale, I wouldn't have been using it to begin with. Added to that, it's a portfolio sale that's a share sale. So on top of that, a second reason I wouldn't have been using it.
All right. Thank you for that. I've got no more questions. Do you wish a summation, Mr. Frolick?
Yeah, in terms of the valuation for this property, we're looking at market evidence where this actual rent supports this. And in terms of the shared sale status of it, we're using it to confirm our value. And as a general rule, but not in most circumstances, if there are shared sales that end up taking place, which are significantly lower than our assessments, we would do our due diligence and then we would come a lot closer to the shared sale price, because on this portfolio that ended up taking place, there were some sales that had taken place within the city of Winnipeg that were higher than what we had, and some were lower. So it's not always the case. So in our valuation process, we try to do a balanced approach, and we try to be reflective of what's been published by investors. And so that concludes my formal presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ms. Navarro, summation?
I think the assessor actually answered part of mine. Some due diligence has to be done here. And I'm not clear that any due diligence has actually been done. Meaning that in order to do that due diligence, you would have to have some type of contact with the purchaser or the vendor to understand what went into this share sale. And beyond that, what went into the greater portfolio sale. That hasn't been done, so due diligence is not there. Second, if we're going to open up this issue to share sales, then we need to have this talk with the assessor, because if that's the case, then and there's a open target on share sales, then it can go both ways. So, but without doing that due diligence, there is an issue with this. So I would summarize it as that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentations. We've now heard all properties on the agenda, and this hearing is now adjourned. So once again, thank you, gentlemen, for your capable presentations, as always.
Okay. Thank you, and have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.